Hey everybody, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs podcast. And the weird thing about this Away Games is it has both hosts of Away Games on it at the same time, and it's actually a new episode. So I'm one of them. I'm Kevin McCaffrey, and this is Adam Amawala.
Yeah, this is Adam Amawala. Sorry we were away for a couple of weeks. We figured you wouldn't miss us too much on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, but we don't know your life. Maybe you really needed us, and we didn't step up for you. And if that's you, we're very sorry.
We are very sorry, but that also makes us a really appropriately 2019-2020 Cubs podcast. If the thing we do is nothing, and then we step up and do nothing for longer than you can think anyone can do nothing.
Right.
That is the way we match the team we talk about.
Yeah, if this podcast were funded by by the Ricketts rather than our own naive hope,
yeah,
there would be no off-season episodes.
Yeah, that's true. So we've already done. We did not personally sign Carlos Asuaje to this podcast, but I think it's possible that we could have. That's still open. We have not signed anyone to a major league deal on this podcast, so we are not working less than the Cubs are.
Right. Although we are happy to announce our new sponsor, Sinclair Media. Kevin, tell us about Sinclair Media.
Sinclair Media, you may know them from owning the most local news stations in the country and for forcing their anchors to read political propaganda on stage. And they're now branching into sports with a little network you might have heard of called Marquee that you also might not see because they haven't figured that out either. No, we don't know. AT&T is down with them, and that's all we know about the fucking network we've been hearing about for years and years.
The Cubs, and I get why they waited, but man alive, hindsight is 2020. But if the Cubs had taken the kind of money they could have gotten a few years ago, it's literally like having a great offer on a house in early 2007. You're like, no, I'm gonna wait it out.
Yeah, right. And then the market crashed, and it just seemed like obviously there's plenty of issues to have with the baseball side of things, but it does seem like the business side of things has really, really blown it to an incredible degree with both the TV deal and from what we've heard, the real estate thing where Tom Ricketts said they went 100% over their budget on real estate. And there's certainly people on Twitter, and follow us at awaygamespod on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. But there's a certain kind of Cubs fan that likes to stand hard for an owner, which is a weird vibe. But to be like, they got to make money. This you got the dollars have to add up. Everything they're doing is fine. If you're a fan who is defending the Ricketts that way, and you're okay with them spending 100% over their real estate budget, which is what they said. That is what Ricketts said. He said they went 100% over budget on real estate, but you're not pushing them to go 100% over budget on baseball. Go away. You don't get it. I don't want to be sitting next to that fan.
And now Madden's Post is gone.
And then who? Oh yeah, Madden's
the restaurant.
It's just like the photo in Back to the Future where Michael J. Fox slowly disappears. That's what's happening with Joe Madden.
And it's one of those things where all of this is above our pay grade. But when you talk about overspending by that much or missing your mark on an estimation, that is so much money to be off by. I've overspent by 100% at dinner. I've gone out and be like, I think I'm going to spend $10 tonight, and then I spend 20, and even that annoys me. So to be doing that with hundreds of millions of dollars, it's this perfect storm of you've got all of that stuff with the going way over budget on the real estate. You've got not cashing in on a TV deal when they had the opportunity to, which I'm sure other people made that same gamble and it didn't pay off. And then you've got a couple big contracts that you did not hit on, or did not hit on until a couple years into them, if we're looking at Darvish. And I don't know. It seems like right now they're either just not going to spend any money at all, or they're waiting to see what happens with the Chris Bryant grievance, because I am not, nor have ever been a defender of the Ricketts. But when you look at, even last year's a good example. They did sign Kimbrel and they did trade for Castellanos. And those were two huge things that a lot of us wanted that did happen. And it still, I guess, ultimately didn't make that much of a difference. And so now you wonder if they're a little snake bit and they're like, well, we keep spending more money on players and it's still not getting us over the hump. So maybe it's time to rethink this whole thing.
Right. Except for that, what it should be is we've spent money on players and we've made the playoffs every year, but won a World Series. So It has worked, overall, generally over a 5-year span. And yeah, the Kimbrel signing was good, even though they still waited halfway into the year to do that. And that's tied to draft pick compensation, I guess, sure. But yeah, the signing of Kimbrel was a big deal. And I just think, obviously there's blame to go around. Crane Kenny said that his job is to fill a bucket with money or a wheelbarrow with money and then dump it at Theo's door, basically, to spend on baseball. Now, Crane Kenny's apparently blown that as well in recent years. But there's blame to go around for how that money has been spent, for sure, with Theo and Jed and baseball operations too. However, when you look back at things, I think there's the thing that convinces me that the goalposts have been moved on Theo instead of him knowing that they were always going to try to get under $208 million. Because when we talk about the Cubs not spending this year, it's not just not spending. It's talking about getting the payroll down after they've already peeled millions and millions off the payroll with people leaving. Cishek just signed with the White Sox, Zobrist, Strop, there's a lot of money has come off the books. And they're still trying to move down. I don't think there's a world in which Theo Epstein would have known this was the financial situation and Tyler Chatwood gets a $38 million deal for 3 years.
In November.
Yeah, exactly. I don't believe it. I think the Jason Hayward deal was a miss. I think that was just, they paid him too much. It was not a good contract. That's a baseball miss. But I think the things like a Chatwood deal, that wouldn't have happened if Theo knew that this year's money was going to be what it is.
Even Darvish, I mean, that's a big contract.
Yeah, it is. And we're happy to have it now, obviously. And the per year, money per year is fine. And God, I mean, he's one of the two starters you really feel really solid about.
Yeah.
And even we're saying really solid. He had an outstanding half of 1 of 2 years with the Cubs. So it's still a little early to be like, well, Darvish is a sure thing for us. But yeah.
Reading a kind of a comment on a Bleed Cubby Blue post yesterday, and somebody made the point of, you look at what the Nationals have done this offseason, and then you look at what the Cubs did in the offseason after 2016, and it's not even close in terms of, adding to an already great team. And, somebody was comparing Ricketts to Jeffrey Loria, which I think is a bit of an overstatement there in terms of all he wanted to do was get a championship, and then after that he was just going to coast on that and
right.
Start trading people and getting under budget. But
it's not bad.
It is frustrating, and you really wonder, because you were there last year. I wonder what the Cubs convention is going to be like this year if nothing happens in the next week or two. Because I think it's this coming weekend, or if not, then shortly after. I mean, is it going to be like when Michael Scott doesn't want to give people bad news and he just shuts the shutters in his office and doesn't come out? Are the Ricketts going to be very, very present?
Well, I mean, that's literally what the Ricketts did last year was they canceled their panel. Last year. So they did the Michael Scott thing last year. And last year, I thought I was there at the convention last year, and I thought fans were more positive than I thought they were going to be. And I think that's more understandable than it is this year, where this year, it's not just that they didn't sign the big free agent that was out there, that was the main disappointing thing for us last year. We kind of kept expecting there would be something else. But Bryce Harper hadn't even signed anywhere yet.
Right, Machado hadn't signed. Yeah, there was not as much action. Now it's not only last year, but then a couple days ago that, Monday kind of being the first day that anything happens in the world anywhere post holidays, there was a flurry of signings. And of course the Cubs were not involved in them. And you probably know this, but the Cubs are now one of only 3 teams who have not signed anyone to a major league deal. Mm-hmm. So you have the Cubs, Pirates, and Rockies as the 3 teams in baseball who have signed nobody to a guaranteed major league deal. And that's just that's not what you expect. I mean,
it's one of the most major market teams in the middle of a contention window, and they are piled in with 2 teams that are fully committed to a teardown rebuild. The Pirates are committed to being 5th place in this upcoming year in the division. Basically, we don't know what's going to happen with the NL Central, except for the Pirates are going to be last. That's who the Cubs are throwing themselves in with in terms of off-season strategy to this point. And the Rockies, I guess this is a good transition to actual baseball rumors, but the Rockies seem to be doing the same thing, where they're tearing down, and there's been more rumors than you would think about the Cubs being tied to Nolan Arenado over the last couple days, which, is a guy on a big old contract, just signed a huge extension last year. And I guess the rumor, basically, what we're looking at, and was it Jeff Passan who was writing about this? He was writing about the rumor in more vague terms, and then and then Brett Taylor, sort of broke it down in what it seems like the obvious thing would be, which would be the Cubs, if they trade for Arenado, they would be tying Jason Hayward contract to that to get rid of it and pairing Wilson Contreras with it. So the value the Rockies are getting is in Contreras, and then they're freeing up money overall because Jason Hayward is owed less than Nolan Arenado,
right,
for the length of the deal. So
ain't that a B?
Yeah, who even knows if the Rockies would be interested in that? But it seems like if there's an Arenado deal, that would be how you would get it done.
But then does Chris Bryant move to the outfield, or do you also trade him?
Well, I would say, you move Chris Bryant to the outfield because that's how you keep the better team. But it seems like almost surely in that scenario, then they're pulling the trigger on the Chris Bryant for prospects deal. So and then I saw, I think over at Bleacher Nation, they were saying, and then you sign Castellanos. So basically you're getting Arenado and Castellanos while you give up Contreras.
Hayward, Bryant, and Contreras.
Yeah. And and you get, and to me, you could argue that that's close to the same production for next year while adding prospects, but I still don't think I don't think it's a thing the Cubs have to do. It's still this sort of artificial barrier on, well, why
change for the sake of change.
Yeah, and honestly, like if the Cubs traded Contreras, I don't want to see them do that, but if they did, there was a number of other catchers they could have signed earlier in the offseason that I would have been down with. You could sort of argue that as a baseball move to me. Now there's no one, so it's Vic Caratini full time if you trade Contreras, which Caratini is a good catcher. He was well above average last year.
But we've never seen him catch 140 games.
No, we haven't. No one has in the majors. So I don't know. It's frustrating because it's a path you could see that sort of makes some baseball sense, but without seeing the return you get for Bryant, hard to know. And also, you can just sign Bryant to a Nolan Arenado like deal. You're allowed to do that and trade Contreras.
Well, there's a lot of things to kind of unpack here. First of all, it seems to me that I don't know how much Bryant would want to sign a deal like that at this point anyway. Like, he has to be kind of annoyed at how things have played out, right?
Yeah, sure. But I think he's not. He knows he got screwed by the Cubs, but not in a way that a bunch of players, like, it wasn't in a new way, like this is just the standard operating procedure where they're like, oh no, for some reason the best players aren't ready for the first 13.
Yeah, and frankly, there have been more egregious examples of that.
Yeah, and so I don't think it's specific anger with the Cubs. The insane thing is that the grievance hasn't been settled yet. It's hard to think of anyone who could be worse at doing their jobs and get to keep their jobs than whoever's hearing this grievance that's been around for 5 years.
Right, but if you have a grievance about the people who do the grievances, Who do you take that grievance to?
As we need a new grievance guy. Grievances all the way up.
It's like the old Mitch Hedberg. I'm against picketing, but I don't know how to show it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's no more, you can't ask to speak to any more managers. It's all done.
Well, but doesn't it seem that is what's holding all of this up? Like, I refuse to believe that this is an offseason that the Cubs truly do nothing. Even if they do something that makes us angry, you feel like they're going to do something. So it also makes me wonder if, because I'm sure Castellanos has had offers, but I also think that he really wants to be a Cub. So I wonder if he's waiting to see how this whole Bryant situation plays out, so that the Cubs, like, it makes me think that the Cubs have told Scott Boras, like, hey, we want Nick back, but we don't know what we can offer him until this other stuff gets resolved. Like, if you don't move on us, we will make him an offer. We just don't know what it is yet.
And the thing is, Castellanos is one of the very top most attractive free agents on the board left, right? It's basically Josh Donaldson, and then you're talking about Castellanos is right after that. So I think the only way Castellanos gets around, even if he likes the Cubs and wants to come back to Chicago, I think the only way he waits around is if they've given Boras and Nick a framework of a contract that they would offer once they pull this other trigger. So he has to know what another team would have to beat for him, because there's no reason to just wait around on good faith for a front office that hasn't done anything for 2 years besides, signing Kimbrel in the middle of last year, if we're talking about impact moves, and then trading for Castellanos, sure, but that, wasn't a free agent signing. So this is the second straight offseason where they've done full on basically nothing. It was Descalso offseason last year, and we haven't even gone that big this year. So
don't sleep on Xavier Cedeno, though.
Xavier Cedeno, Tony Barnett, RIP, all those marginal signings that they were hoping to do something with.
Where do you see Donaldson landing?
I think that it's hard to know how tied in that is to the grievance thing too, because once the grievance is settled, teams would know what, teams who are targeting a high impact third baseman would know what they have to do for sure to get a Chris Bryant, and would probably spur everyone to move quicker on on Donaldson too. I don't know. It seems like the teams we've heard the most about are Atlanta, Washington, Minnesota, with the Rangers on the outside for Donaldson. It seems like Donaldson wants to go back to Atlanta. And if he does, then that takes away, to me, the most attractive rumored, like sort of credibly rumored package that I've seen for Bryant.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And again, I don't think it's Theo's fault. I think he's very much handcuffed here. And unfortunately, he's also in a position where he can't really throw the Ricketts under the bus. Like, that's just not what you do to your job, to your boss. But like,
wouldn't be
it literally almost seems like the Cubs misinterpreted the addition of the 26th roster spot as being like, you can only sign people who qualify for that exact spot.
That's true. Everyone the Cubs have signed is recently is borderline major league. Right?
Yeah, it's a bunch of like 4A players, basically.
Right. Yeah, it's very strange. And we went into this offseason assuming that if Zobrist wanted to play again, they would, that would be a very solid sort of signing to have floating around as a sort of utility. You don't count on him necessarily every day.
Yeah.
Good for the clubhouse and good to, play a bunch of positions and be a great 26-man in Zobrist. And like Pedro Strop, another guy where it's a leader in the clubhouse, leader in that bullpen that you can have back for not much money. But they're not even willing to talk money with those guys.
Do you think there's any way that the Cubs re-sign Zobrist?
Yes, but not now. Also, I think Zobrist is the kind of guy, he's sort of such an outlier of a guy, I think. I think he would sign 1 year way under market value, knowing how last year went,
Yeah.
I think he would sort of do one more like, that wasn't the way I want to go out year, whatever it takes to come back, veterans minimum even. I would not be surprised if he came back like that. But if the Cubs are so committed to getting under $208 million, then there is no money till they clear, a Bryant-like salary or a Hayward-like salary. But you're not clearing Hayward without some gigantic deal happening. So Yeah.
All right, here's my other question.
Yeah.
Let's say it's fast forward, I guess, a little over 2 months. I want to say opening day is like March 26th or something. It's like not that far away, really.
Yeah.
Let's say nothing happens. Cubs don't
Yeah.
make any signings. The Bryant trade never, materializes. The Cubs come into this season with the exact, some collection of 26 players out of the group of people that they have right now.
Yeah.
How many games does that team win? Do they have a shot at the division? Are they even remotely in the category of being a playoff or World Series team?
I think they have a shot at the division in the way that the Minnesota Twins had a shot of winning 100 games going into last year. In that,
like everything has to go right.
Yeah, in that the Twins won 100 games last year, and that's, to me, a roster that is not a 100-win roster. I think if you went into last year looking at the Twins roster and said this team wins 90 games, you'd be like, good for them, So I think it would take basically everything going right for the Cubs to contend for the division this year. That said, the Reds have made moves to be a contender. They've been, they've done a lot of good things. The Cardinals and Brewers are still good. So it's enough of a mess in that division that we could see, I think you could see a win total in the 80s winning the division again. And I still think the Cubs roster is like, they won 84 games last year. That seems about right to me for this year, because I think they weirdly underperformed to get to 84 last year, and I think this year it looks like a true 84 win team, which is just among the most boring things you could say.
Oh, of course, and to your point, that means that if they are kind of on paper an 84 win team, that there's a world in which they overachieve a bit and win 90 games and win a division that way, and there's also a world in which they win 75 games.
Oh yeah, I mean, with this roster right now, if Hendricks and or Darvish get hurt, it's barely a major league rotation.
Yeah,
to say nothing of any of the other issues. So you could as easily see them winning 90 as you could see them winning 75, and I'd be hard pressed to not say it's more likely to go 75 than 90 at this moment, just because I just fully don't have any belief in what they're going to do over the next month either. And I don't think, I obviously Theo, Jed, and baseball operations, I think is a very good group. Is incredible historically. They have not, no one in this organization besides some players has earned benefit of the doubt now. It's been a couple years since
I think it's almost like futile to think about this, but I think this entire window for the Cubs shifted when they lost that wild card game in 2018.
The Rockies game,
They were one game away from going into those playoffs with the best record in the NL.
Yeah.
About to face a team coming off a wild card game.
Yeah.
And I don't know that what they would have done that year, but I feel like there was a very specific dynamic shift from the end of 2018 that carried over into last year and it is now just like pervasive.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's easy to forget how relatively recent in baseball terms it was that the Cubs were a 95-win team. As you say, best team in the National League. They were, them and the Brewers were right there, and that was just year before last. And the thing is, they're not that far away from being arguably the best team in the National League. It takes a couple of pieces, but it's a couple of pieces that they have not been willing to do.
Yeah.
So it's and they would talk about stepping back under the luxury tax to reset the luxury tax rules and everything going forward. Obviously, yes, that's helpful, but is it worth wasting 1 year of everyone's prime, of this core's prime? And to me, that answer is no. Because that is we've seen how hard it is to hit on players, even if you are an incredible baseball operation like the Cubs have had. Basically, we hit on this core in a way, and then they've not hit on a lot of players since then.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you take any step back, what you're basically doing is, if it's not a full punt, you're at least, it's like handing the ball off going up the middle on 3rd and 15 is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're taking a step back while you have all these players, Rizzo still in his prime, Baez, Schwarber, all these guys, you're wasting a year. And that is not something you can get back, and that's depressing.
Yeah, I'm a little triggered. I think it almost makes me feel like the Cubs don't realize that they're all I have, and that bothers me.
It does. They should know.
On a personal level, it really bothers me.
Do you guys know how much we need this? We need something. Just do.
If the Cubs go back to being shit, I have nothing.
Yeah.
Being able to look forward to 6 months of a competitive baseball team really helps.
Yeah, it really does. We're going to have to get off to a strong start. At least we're going to London.
Yes, that is true.
That'll be a good thing in the middle of the year. Myself and my brother Patrick are taking my brother Joe to spring training as a final brothers trip because my brother Joe's having a baby. So so before that happens, we're doing a final bro trip. So we're going to be out there the first weekend of spring training for that. Yeah. To see the Carlos Asuaje. And I apologize to Carlos if that's not how you pronounce his name.
I think it is.
Okay. To see his big debut. And what jersey number is he wearing? So yeah, I don't know.
85B.
Yeah. It should everyone the Cubs have no one the Cubs have signed this offseason should have a number below the 80s, and yes, I agree. Some of them should also be amended by lowercase letters. Yeah. So I mean it feels like there's really nothing. We've missed 2 weeks, but what have we really missed talking about? It's talking about inaction and pondering reasons for it and then various rumors. The rumor I liked, because it's been a long time since you and I were on this podcast together, since December 4th, I think. The rumored package of Chris Bryant for something involving Victor Robles. Cool, I like Victor Robles. He's not Chris Bryant. And then the Atlanta package, some combination of Ian Anderson, who's a top level pitching prospect. Yeah. Drew Waters, possible leadoff guy, center field, also top 50 prospect in the game. Kyle Wright, a starter who didn't do well last year, but was a top 10 pick out of Vanderbilt, which you like as a starting pitcher. And I believe Austin Riley at power hitting, but big time strikeout corner infielder, some package involving those guys. Really, just those two rumors, that's all we've missed in the last 3 weeks. We're caught up,
Yeah, even beyond those few weeks. I mean, obviously there's been stuff in baseball, but I mean, as we've alluded to, we could have not talked since September 30th and not had a lot to report Cubs-wise.
Yeah. If we were doing a White Sox podcast, we'd have a ton to talk about. They've done a million things.
They've spent, I don't know how up-to-date this tweet is, but I was just looking at it. So I mentioned that the Cubs, Pirates, and Rockies, excuse me, are the only teams that have not spent anything. The White Sox are fourth on that list. Fourth highest. They've spent almost $200 million. Yeah,
and it seems like it's been $200 million that's spent in a way that seems smart and reasonable.
It does, yeah.
Yasmani Grandal, Dallas Keuchel, Gio Gonzalez, and then extending Luis Robert before he plays a single major league game, which is something the Cubs haven't really done since. So basically, what they did with Rizzo and Starlin Castro, new Washington National Starlin Castro, to some degree.
Yeah.
Signed him to long-term extensions very early. They haven't done that with anyone else, and the White Sox are doing that now. And in hindsight, it seems like they really should have pushed harder. If you were gonna, there's been talk about how there were so many deals rumored for Kyle Schwarber over the last couple of years, and other guys from the core. If you were going to hang on to them like they have, which, by the way, I mainly agree with. I don't want Kyle Schwarber going anywhere. But locking them up to sort of long-term deals early in their careers, like the White Sox did with Eloy and now Luis Robert, seems like would have been helpful to avoid an off season like this. But
and you got to think. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that the White Sox have a shot at the playoffs with
Oh,
the
absolutely not.
I don't know about even the division. Maybe I think it's reasonable to expect that the Twins are going to regress.
Yeah.
They would almost have to, I would think.
Pitching wise, starting pitching.
The Indians, same thing. So kind of wide open.
Yeah, Cleveland has not made any big helpful moves, and they're still rumored to be looking for a taker for Lindor because they're not going to resign him.
And remember, we could be the Indians. As much as all of this sucks, they're kind of on a similar path in terms of their window, and it's closing in a way that's definitely more heartbreaking.
Oh God, it's
having lost in 2016 and then that incredible year they had in 2017 and losing in a pretty excruciating way.
Yeah,
that way. I mean, that's some Bills ass shit.
It is some Bills ass shit, and they even won 93 games last year, I think, but didn't make the playoffs because of the way the AL shook out. So speaking of
overusing the word triggering, I don't know if you watched the Bills game, but I feel it in my chest. Like when I watch that team, I feel very much like a Cubs fan. Like you watching those games, and you just have that feeling of like, oh my God, it's happening.
Yeah. Yes, spiritual cousins, and they are, and it's and the Bills have a good fan base, an enthusiastic fan base, and they genuinely seem to, they're like, of course something's going to happen to us, but there's also enough of that fan base that really believes going into each game, like this is the time. It's different.
Yeah, did you see that video of? I think it was when they clinched the playoff spot of like Josh Allen getting off a plane at like 3 a.m. in Buffalo, and there's just like thousands of people in freezing weather to just like wave at him.
Yeah, it's a really fun fan base. Yeah, and but yes, I think it is a very old school Cubs feeling where they get up by a certain amount, and if it's not past the point of true literal no return, you feel yourself being like, oh, how will it go bad? And then it does.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that Deshaun Watson escape is their like Rajay Davis, except it ultimately ended worse.
Right. Yes. Worse than, that's true. Yeah, they weren't able to come back afterwards.
But I don't know if you watched the other games. It was one of the best, if not the best, wild card weekends there's been in football. And if you want to make some bets on the NFL in this very slow time for baseball, you should check out our friends at Thrive Fantasy.
Yeah.
Have you heard the good word?
Have you heard the news? Have you heard the good news? Yeah.
Well, Thrive Fantasy is a DFS app for prop bets. They have streamlined the drafting process and eliminated the need to do unnecessary hours of research by using only top-tier athletes. And basically, the less likely the prop bet is to occur, the more points the choice will be worth, and you build up your team score around the amount of correct props you select. As always, use promo code awaygames and get a free $10 bonus with your first deposit of $10 or more. That is Thrive Fantasy, promo code awaygames.
Heck yeah. So go gamble on something. You get a little action going while there's no action going for the Cubs. So promo code awaygames at Thrive Fantasy. Check it out. Let us know, and let us know how it is too. How you're enjoying Thrive Fantasy over there. You tweet at us at awaygamespod, Instagram at awaygamespod. You can slide into those DMs. Also, awaygamespodcast at gmail.com. Hit us up anywhere there. And on the subject of podcast stuff, the IVNV podcast has been going for over a decade, and they announced that this is their last year doing a Cubs podcast, and they are one of the Cubs podcasts that I will occasionally listen to. And I don't listen to a ton of other Cubs podcasts because you do have to have some other elements of your life, I guess. But whenever I've listened to those guys, I feel like they're knowledgeable. They seem like good dudes. They've been doing it since before it was cool, early in the podcast game. So congrats to the IVNB guys on a good run, and hopefully they get a miraculous great run in their final season here.
Yeah, hell yeah. Got anything else?
I have. Adam, I have nothing else.
Do you know if Thrive Fantasy has an option where you can pick an over-under for spending on the Cubs offseason?
Oh, man.
The over-under being $1?
Yeah, they should. The one guaranteed major league dollar. Yeah. No, but it would be nice if we could get, if we were just a little tighter with the guys over there at Thrive, we could get a custom prop for that. Yeah. Anything else with you?
I don't think so. If anybody listening lives in the Los Angeles area, I'll be out there for a week doing shows between January 24th and January 31st. So, as always, you know where to find us on Twitter. But if anybody's going to be out there, come out to a show. I know some people. I feel like we've actually had some people come out to shows who tell us that they've listened.
Yeah, for sure.
More so in places you would expect, like Illinois, but you know.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I had one person in Appleton, Wisconsin, say they listened to the podcast.
Nice.
I was there the week after Christmas, which is a very fun comedy club up there, Skyline in Appleton.
There you go.
But come see us in person. We'll actually do our jobs on stage. If you come see us, we'll do our jobs for 45 minutes. That's a promise we make you.
Yeah.
This team has not this off season.
And how about this? If anyone's in the New York area, you can see both of us at the same time in person at Kevin's show.
That's true.
Tuesday, January 21st.
Tuesday, January 21st. The rare treat of both Kevin and Adam on a show together at Caveat in NYC with some other great comics as well. Todd Barry and Mia Jackson are on the show as well. Mia just had an awesome Comedy Central half hour. And Todd Barry's Todd Barry. So, if you're in New York, come see us January 21st at Caveat. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next week, hopefully with something to talk about.